You're listening to the AfterBuzz TV network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Keith Johnson.
From the AfterBuzz Studios in Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies. This is AfterBuzz TV's Preachers of L.A. After Show. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest news and gossip. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite TV show. It's AfterBuzz TV's Preachers of L.A. After Show.
What up? What up?
Hello,
what up?
everyone. We are here in AfterBuzz. Where's our preacher music?
Jesus, be it
Praise the Lord.
I can sing. Or you want me to sing the intro?
I think I know the words. Santa, call me a healer, because I can't lie.
Oh, no.
Okay,
Lord,
stop.
oh, hallelujah, Lord. No.
Well, welcome to AfterBuzz. This is the after show for Preachers of L.A. I'm your host, Fallon Mercedes, with
Me, Megan Thomas, also known as @MegScoop on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And shout out, whoop, whoop, to Pray or Die for my shirt. As you can see, it says Jesus, I'm about that life. I thought it was appropriate for today.
I don't know if you guys can see, but I love how Jesus has his, what is that called on his head?
It's his crown.
His crown, but it's around his neck like a chain.
chain.
It's the hood Jesus.
It's Jesus 2013.
And we do have some preachers who I guess still have some hood in them in this show, and I think we're going to cover it. Today we're going to cover episodes 2 and 3. Episode 2 is called Acceptance, and episode 3 is Tea and Sympathy. And we're going to do our best because we have so much to cover in such little time, but we have extensive notes. Both Megan and I, we bought our beautiful Bibles. Shout out to Megan's mom
and me. I helped her. I made the handles on my Bible cover.
Who made this beautiful Bible.
That's so country. That is so country. I love it.
But we wanted to, throw some scripture into this because I don't want to be quoting wrong. I don't want to embarrass myself.
And more importantly, not embarrass the Lord, because this is a show about people who have done some things that reflect God and others who have not reflected God so much. So we want to make sure we don't fall into that trap of saying, well, I think it says something like this. We don't want to do that. So,
And then do we have a call-in number for this studio? Is it the regular number?
Yes, if they're watching, the call number's there on the website.
Okay,
for
nice.
the specific shows.
Thank you guys call in. Please chime in with us. You guys were commenting on YouTube. Great comments. We will address those later, and we want you guys to be part of this because this is why we do the show.
Right.
So I guess we'll start off with episode 2.
Oh, also one last thing. The regular time is Thursday.
That's the voice of God. No.
Voice.
I
wish. Regular taping is going to be Thursday nights. Check the AfterBuzzTV.com website. So right now we're just playing a little bit of catch up, but that will be the regular time on Thursday nights.
Thursday night.
So
8 p.m. Pacific.
Keep a spot open for us right after, or I should say the day after you guys watch each episode, because the show airs on Wednesday and then we will be on air on Thursday. But like you said, we're playing catch up. So episode 2, Acceptance, it opened up, and this is how I think all the episodes open up, with each pastor preaching a snippet of them on stage doing what they do best.
And I get so hyped. I'm not gonna lie. Like each snippet, you feel the presence of God.
I got chills thinking about it.
You do feel some kind of anointing when the intros come in, because I remember going, I don't even know what their sermon is about, but you feel it, right?
Yes. You feel it so much that I almost want to have an episode where we just hear them preach.
Girl, that's called TBN. That's
and this is true. And we can just go to their churches, and that, I guess that wouldn't make it Preachers of L.A. We want to see what's really going on in their real lives. But it's nice that each episode opens up with just a little snippet of what they do best.
Right.
So after we see them preach and do what they do best, we see Deitrick and McClendon both talk to people that they consider close to them about what really went down and man cave. And that was the big highlight of episode 1. So Deitrick opened up and was talking to Dominique and see his road manager about, you know, his, I guess, view on what really went down. What did you think about what Deitrick had to say?
Well, I mean, I guess he just gave his recap, but what stuck out to me, honestly, was how Dominique handled that. This made me love her so much more, because she says to him, you know, I hope you come as humble as you want him to be. And, you know, she's like, I'm just trying to keep you right. That is amazing to me, because there's so many times when you have somebody that's on your team who is just a yes person. And we see here Dominique is not just a yes person. She's like, look, babe, you're going to have to come a little humble if you want him to be that way. And she gives good, sound advice. The good, sound, godly advice that a man like him needs. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah, I could appreciate it too. Then we fast forward to McClendon showing up at Jones's home. And can I say, I spotted this. He arrived alone without his entourage.
Right. And I'm happy he did, you know, because he did catch some flack for that. I think he just needed to explain what he was trying to say a little better. But, I mean, Jesus had an entourage, you know.
12 disciples.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's kind of how he put it that made it seem very bad in episode 1.
So he sits down with Noel Jones, who, if you notice, was not at the Man Cave event. I guess maybe he was traveling and preaching, so he couldn't make it. So Jones was asking McClendon what really went down, and McClendon's take on it was just basically he feels that Deitrick didn't know him, and he was coming at him in a certain way and getting loud. And one thing I can say about Deitrick is he is very passionate about what he feels, and he expresses it in what he says. He uses his hands, his voice gets louder. But I think when you are talking to other men, especially who have the same or similar calling as you, you know, that can come off as disrespectful.
Right. And I think that's the thing with Deitrick. He means well. The boy knows his word. I mean, as you can tell, he said he's got his doctorate in divinity. He knows the Bible forward and backwards, but I think his delivery, again, is horrific. So that's probably why Bishop McClendon felt the way that he did. However, Bishop McClendon also came off as like, look, boy, you don't know what you're talking about. Like you're less than me. And that was incorrect. And so the exchange between Bishop McClendon and Bishop Jones, it kind of came off, you know, when you see Deitrick and Dominique, they're all about reconciliation. She's like, come as humble as you want him to be. And then you go over here to Bishop McClendon and Bishop Jones, and Jones is telling him, like, look, you should, you know, reconcile, meet up. And then Bishop McClendon, to me, seems like he doesn't really want to. Yeah. And to the point where Bishop Jones has to say, it's probably more for Deitrick anyway. And I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. It's never okay to be a Christian and then to be okay with discord. Like, that's not okay. Not saying that y'all got to be the best of friends, but you need to fix that. You need to pass that up, Bishop McClendon. That's not okay.
I agree. It did seem, well, they both stated they don't have a problem with each other. They don't really know each other.
Right.
But obviously a problem was there, because that's why they got into the scuffle in the first place. And it was funny because McClendon said he wasn't trying to step to Deitrick, even though it came off as so when he got up and he walked away. He was simply just walking away. And Jones said to McClendon that they may still have some street in them, because all of these preachers, you know, they have these backgrounds that some of them come from the hood, and they weren't living the lifestyle that they live now.
Right.
The way they grew up.
Right.
You know?
And then he said Bishop McClendon is a little more removed. I wonder what that means. Maybe he was never really hood.
I think he does have some background, but I know McClendon, I think it came, you know, his grandfather passed down the church, or, you know, so maybe. So
he wasn't blooding it up or cripping it up nowhere, basically.
Not like
Bishop Gibson.
Yes. All right, so we're going to move on to April and David. Well, I should say April becoming David. Now, Pastor Hazlip had been preaching in his church for a while, and April was one of the members of his church who was a pro skater, who was a girl pro skater. And I guess it came to Jay's attention that April is no longer a woman, has changed his gender to a man. So now April goes by the name of David. We see Jay take this to his wife and also one of the younger pastors in the church who knew of April, and he kind of brings it to their attention because he doesn't know how to handle this. Right. And I think it's great that they put this on television because this is real life. Like, I know from back home, I know friends of mine, actually 2 twins who grew up in the Pentecostal church, and they both became girls, and they're originally guys, and you don't know how to handle it, and you just want to show them love, and kind of like what Christy, Jay's wife, was saying is, let's just show them love. And I love the women in the show. Right. They seem to really
the first ladies are
be
awesome.
the first ladies and really lead their man, because Jay seemed like he didn't know what direction to go into. What do you feel about Christy?
I love their relationship. This is why the Hayslips are my favorite, because they are so loving. Mm-hmm. They honestly, to me, balance out the rest of the show. Not saying that other pastors and their wives are not as godly or Christ-like, because they all are in their own way. But this couple, especially for me, they're very loving. And that, at the end of the day, is the essence of what we're supposed to be showing people. And I love how Pastor Hayslip is really humble when he comes. He's not one of those preachers that's like, I know how to handle this. Look, the Bible says it's an abomination. Like, yes. Okay, so we all know what the Bible says about homosexuality, about all this. Okay, fine. But past that, how do we deal with people who just want to be loved? Yeah. You don't want to shun somebody to where they don't even feel comfortable coming to a church because people are talking about them and looking at them. Like, nobody is sinless. You can't, cast a stone if you're sinless. Exactly. Nobody's going to be casting a stone. So my whole point is, I love the Hayslips, and I love the fact that the way that they handle this, and even more so, Christy says, I don't want to be those kind of Christians. And that's real. You don't want to be the Christians that are hypocrites, because that is what a lot of Christian people are known to be. And when Pastor Hayslip finally does meet up with April David, or I should say David, which, by the way, David really looks like a man. I was convinced. Hold on, wait a minute. I saw Adam's apple. I was like, hold on, how is April? Can you manufacture an Adam's apple?
Maybe.
I don't know, but I'm just saying, David, you really look like a boy to me. Yeah. I had no idea that David used to be April. But anyway, so when Pastor Hayslip is talking to David, I think it's so profound that he says, I haven't used your name because I don't really know what to say.
I like how he said in that same sentence, he said, first, David said, I want you to first, because Hayslip was like, what do you want me to do?
Right.
And
how many times do you hear a pastor say that?
Exactly. Never. I love that. And David said, I want you to call me David. And Hayslip said, the reason why I haven't used your name, and you probably noticed that I've been struggling with this, is because I want to respect you, but I don't want to offend God either. And I love that. He's trying to balance it.
Right. And that's what love is about. That's the whole point, because a lot of people are so quick, especially Christians, are so quick to Bible thump on people. Well, the word of the Lord says, you know what I mean? But we all know what it says. Past that, what is it about? It's about being loving. And that's really what he showed. He said, you know what, David, I want you to come to church. I want you to make sure you stay on top of your word, you stay with God. Like, that's it. At the end of the day, I'm learning just like you. I don't know how this goes, but I want you to understand that I still love you, and I'm still here with open arms, and my church is always open to you. And that is exactly how you're supposed to handle stuff as a Christian.
And one of the first things Jay had said to David was, are you going to church?
Right.
And I like that. And David said, I'm going to another church. And he kind of elaborated, well, it's kind of hard for me to come to this church because I know people are going to have questions.
Right.
And they're going to struggle with accepting him as a man now. And Hayslip kind of, told him, I understand everybody doesn't need to know your past. He said, I don't wear a sign on my chest that says I was a drug user.
Right.
And I really, really like that, because I don't believe everybody needs to know about your past.
Right. And that's so real. We tend to put different sins on different levels and say, this is a bigger sin, this needs to be exposed. But at the end of the day, they're all the same.
A sin is a sin.
Right. So if you want David to walk around with, I used to be a woman, strapped across his chest, then I'm sure you're going to need to, everybody that's walking around that church that is not a virgin needs to have that on their shirt too. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to be fair with all the different quote unquote sins. And we got to stop saying stuff like well, that's not what God would do. You don't know what God would do. He just wants you to be loving and pray about it. That's it. Let the Holy Spirit do the work, like Christy said.
Exactly. One thing that did catch my attention, Hazlip, when he was talking to his wife about finding out that April is now David, he had said that, he considers himself knowing David pretty well, April pretty well, and he didn't know that he was having these issues, that he wanted to change his gender. Right. And to me, that was a red flag, because I feel like, I know his church is big, but I feel like if he knew April pretty well, how come there was no counseling going on? And that's the only thing that I can see about these big churches, is that they don't have that community. And I can say that's one thing that I miss about back home to here. I love that everybody is welcoming, that it's come as you are here, but you don't get that one-on-one attention if there's 4,000 members in your church and there's 3 services going on. You don't get to sit down with your pastor as much as you would if you go to a church that has 120 members.
Right. I mean, but I would say this in the Hayslip's defense, I don't know if April was willing to open up about that to her pastor at that time, because when he walks in and he's talking to his wife and the youth pastor, he's like, I just got off the phone with April, who's now David. This is something new. So maybe April wasn't really open to the fact of sharing that she wanted to become David. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't really hold that against him. I mean, it could be because he has a big church, but I honestly just think that April didn't want to say anything.
Yeah. One other thing that I noticed about this scene, and I don't know if you noticed it too, they kind of walked off, and I know Jay was a little uncomfortable, and he said that. Right. But I wish Jay would have just hugged David. Right. And just kind of really let him feel the love of God through him. Right. I felt like here we have this girl who is now a boy who is reaching out to his old pastor because he wants acceptance and he wants love. And I wish that there was a shot of them just hugging instead of just walking off into the sunset.
Or if they did hug, to show it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I think that would have been awesome. I'm with you on that. Yeah. High five. Boom.
What do you guys think out there? What are your thoughts on Jay, trying to figure out how he should? Do you think Jay actually handled this situation well? I know you've seen a lot of tweets about it and a lot of people agree. Do you think he should have accepted him with open arms back into the church, or do you think he should have went a little more Bible in certain areas on this, or do you agree with Christy? Just show him the love of Jesus Christ.
The love of Jesus.
All right, so let's talk about Mr. Jones.
Oh, Bishop Noel Jones.
Now, we kind of seen in the first episode that Jones, he travels the world. He's kind of like a Christian rock star. Right. Women seem to love him. And he explained before that he was married, he's divorced, and this was over 20 years ago. But he has this special friend named Loretta, whose last name is also Jones.
Is it really?
It is. And that's why in one of the scenes, his driver says, could she be the real Mrs. Jones?
Right.
Because her last name is Jones as well.
Okay. Well, that makes sense then.
So we see in this episode that Jones sits down with his family. This is this episode.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, no, even in the car before that, he's talking to his driver, and his driver does say that, you got a lot of women basically, but Loretta's hanging on. And then, of course, he's like, could she be the real Mrs. Jones? And I just think, I just want to say this. I really feel bad. I don't know if I should feel bad for anybody in this situation, because obviously
Loretta,
I don't know if I should feel bad for her. Oh. And the reason I say this is because Bishop Jones, obviously, he doesn't want to get married, okay? The man doesn't want to get married. If he wanted to get married, he would have been gotten married to you, Loretta. I'm sorry. But at the same time, Loretta's kind of hanging. She's kind of lurking still, because I don't know if there's some hope there. He keeps telling her, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if I should feel bad. I'm still, the jury's still out on this one. But the fact that they co-own a restaurant says a lot.
Yes.
I don't know, because I don't see Bishop Jones just dishing out money for anybody that wants to partner up with him. So this kind of got to be his boo thing. I'm going to need him to say that and not just be like, this is my friend.
Yes, I need facts. I need them to say exactly what it is. But We don't see this in this episode or episode 3, unfortunately. They keep on referring to what they have as friendship. So.
Right. And then he tells her, he's like, I'm just too old for this.
And I looked up how old he was. I think he's 62.
Which, okay, granted.
He's in his 60s.
Granted.
Do you think that's too old?
No, I don't think it's too old to get married, but I think basically, look, he don't want to get married. Bishop Jones don't want to get married. It's not even, he keeps throwing out different excuses. If you say, I'm too old for this, I'm not right for this, and of course Loretta's like, no, you are right for this. The man don't want to get married, Loretta. Leave him alone. You're cute. You're cute. You can get another guy.
I give her a lot of credit. You go, girl, for having faith for 16 years. That is a woman of faith. 16 years.
I don't know. Hold on. Because, faith and stupidity is a thin line. I'm just saying. It's a very thin line, for real. I don't know. I really just feel, like I said, I don't know if I should feel bad for her because she has been.
I think the godly woman in you is feeling bad because you have sympathy. You know that every woman wants to be loved and to be married off, as they should be. But a part of you is probably like, come on, girl, 16 years.
Get with it. And to me, I think more than anything, it really is Bishop Jones's attitude about the situation. And then the other thing he says, he said, oh, yeah, he's like, why would I get married after I retire? Like, why would I get another that's like, job. Why would I leave one job for another job? Silence on this one. Because Bishop Jones, clearly you don't want to get married. Leave the man alone. I'm sorry. Honestly, he doesn't have to get married. Now, there's a lot of church people who will disagree and say that pastors need to get married. No, they only need to get married if they got that sex demon on their back, okay? Let's just be all the way real. If he's got the lustiness and he hasn't been delivered from that, then yes, as in, let me go to the word here, as in 1 Corinthians 7:9, but if they cannot exercise self-control, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. So clearly, if you got that sex monkey on your back, you need to get married. But
this is what we don't know.
Right. But if he's overcome that, then leave the man alone and let him just run his ministry worldwide and be busy traveling everywhere.
And I think it would be so much easier if we knew. But I know there was, in episode 3, we see them talking, and then he mentions at the end of their going back and forth, he said, all right, I think it's time to go to bed. And it looks like he means, like, get out of my house. That's how I took it.
Right, I took it like that, too.
So maybe they aren't, doing the do. Maybe he is over that.
Well, I do have a problem with the production company because if we're going to be honest and put their lives out there, then I think this is something that should be addressed. It hasn't up to this point, up to the 3rd episode, but I do think it should be addressed. What's really going on? We keep talking about this shacking situation with Deitrick and Dominique, who are legitimately getting married. However, we make no mention of this for Bishop Jones and his special friend Loretta. I think personally, here I am, I'm going to defend, if the production company knew what was going on, they would try to show it. You don't know, like, unless you're going into the bedroom, and I don't think a lot of people are letting cameras in their bedroom because then we might be seeing stuff, between Deitrick and Dom. We would know what's really going on and that we don't know as of yet. I agree with that, but I'm saying, look, can they stay outside of Bishop Jones' house and put the time? You're like, it is 4:45 and Loretta's car is
You are funny.
I'm just saying, they need to be honest. I need to know what's going on with Bishop Jones and Loretta.
Yeah. I think they are special friends. It's been 16 years, but...
What is special friends? Define special friends.
I think their special friendship is they do love each other. And I don't know if that means in a lustful manner, but I know they really do love each other. If they've been friends for this long and they have a dog that they share together. And
do they share that dog?
Yes.
Do they?
They do.
Oh.
Well, that's what it seems like. I may be wrong, but I think they share the dog together.
They name the business.
And they name the business after the dog. Right. So it's like they have a kid together, kind of, and they have this business, and, so they are special friends.
They're special cut friends. I'm sorry. I'm just being real. Like, you got to be honest about this stuff.
All right, so let's move on since we're having this, lustful discussion. Let's move on to the whole shacking discussion.
Yes.
We see the Gibsons. They have a dinner date with Deitrick and Dominique, and you know, they start being real. And this is what I love about Gibson. He is not afraid to say what's on his mind. And I know they always say it, both him and his wife, they say these things out of a place of love because they've been married for so long, over 30 years. They want to guide, you know, Deitrick and Dom and help them, you know, make sure they're getting married for the right reason. Do you think that they're engaged for the right reason?
I definitely do. I definitely do think that they love each other, and that I do think that this union when they get married, will be blessed by God. The situation with Bishop Gibson and Loretta, who I feel like they overstepped their boundaries. If you're really a mentor and you're really imparting knowledge, you should probably start with, what would you guys like to know? That to me seems like the obvious question, instead of the Gibsons, you know, talking to the Hattons and saying, are y'all shacking? First, there's so many more important and deeper things that need to be talked about when it comes to marriage. And the first thing you come with is shacking.
But let me say this. It's something that we all want to know.
I mean, true. I mean, but still, hold on. Because again, and this is why Deitrick goes off and Dominic has to tell him to calm down. Because he's like, yo, I'm sick of you pastors over here. First of all, shacking, it ain't in the Bible that you can't live together. I mean, technically, he's right. It doesn't say that. And the issue that people have with shacking is not necessarily living together. It is the premarital sex that goes on when people live together. But again, if you ain't got that sex monkey on your back, which very few people don't, then there's no problem with the people living together. And that's what they need to say.
Let's pull out some scripture. This was the only, I don't know if you looked up any scriptures. This is the only scripture that I can find that has anything kind of to do with shacking. It doesn't say shacking, but it's John 3, and it's John 4, verse 18.
Yes, girl, I got that one. Go ahead.
Jesus encounters a Samaritan by the well who was a woman, and this is what he basically says. Jesus replied to her saying, you are right when you say you don't have a husband. You have been married to 5 men, and the man you live with now is not really your husband. You have told me the truth. So I mean, and to me, that's saying, you know, for Jesus to bring up the fact to her that, no, you've been married to 5 men, but the man you live with now, that's not your husband. So
he's saying you haven't been married to 5 men, meaning that the guy, basically you've lived with 5 dudes before, and
you have been married to 5 men. And the man you live with now is not really your husband. I'm
sorry. I'm looking at the wrong thing.
So she was married and legit married to 5 men. But just because the man she's with now, she's living with him, that doesn't make her husband because they're living together. So to me, Jesus is implying you're shacking and you're living in a lie.
But here's the thing. Again, shacking, because people have a problem with folks living together. We have to make the separation that shacking means premarital sex and living together, okay? But if people, like, if they're in a relationship and they're like, you know what, we have committed ourselves to not have sex. It's very hard, but we're able to do that. But we want to live together because we have a family together. But that's their personal business. And what I'm saying is we don't know. We don't know if that's something that only them and God know, if that's something that really is a thorn in their side. You know what I'm saying?
I don't believe that happens. I think when you are in a relationship with somebody and you're living together, that comes with it.
Not necessarily, because I know people who, it's very hard. That's what I'm saying. There's a small amount. But what I'm saying is we have to make the distinction. We can't just lump everybody in the same group and say shacking is wrong. No, we have to say what is wrong about shacking, because that gives us the mentality that, you know, if you're living together, I mean, obviously, I feel like this in their situation, because they're already engaged, they're about to get married in 2 months, they have a kid together. I honestly feel like they should just go to the courthouse, get the paper documentation, and move in together. Yeah. And you don't have to tell people if they want to be mad. You can just, your response to them is, we live together, and we believe that when you live together, you should be married. And if they're like, well, are you already married? Be like, you'll find out, huh?
To be honest, and this is my own personal opinion, I'm not, you know, representing, a certain belief or anything. And this is me being a part of being a Christian. But I really believe that, they had a child out of sinning. And I don't see anything wrong with them living together and being a family without being married. And the reason why I say that is because I kind of feel bad for their daughter, because not that he's not a good husband, but I feel like it hurts the child the most.
Yeah.
When they can't wake up to both parents. To me, they sinned and they created this baby, and that was a sin before the shacking. So I feel like, why not let them live together? But I do understand why they want to. Some people, they don't want to live together and shack because maybe Dominique wants him to put a ring on her finger and make it legit. Maybe he might get comfortable if he doesn't marry her and just lives with her. So.
Right. I don't know. I honestly think the best thing for their situation, and I get what they're saying, is, we don't want to be a stumbling block to anybody, especially because Deitrick's position, in the gospel world, they don't want to give the perception like they're over here shacking. Okay, cool. I get that. But what they honestly need to go do is just go get married. Just go get the license. You don't have to tell anybody. That's between y'all and God. It's legit. It is legally legit, whatever.
But do you think that people should be getting married, going, running to the courthouse just to get married, just so it doesn't look like they're shacking? And I think that was one of the things that Gibson said before he had dinner with them is, I want to make sure they're getting married for the right reasons.
Right.
And, I think it should be love.
Right.
So do you feel that people should go off and get married so they're not shacking, or should it be?
No. Here's the thing. You shouldn't be having premarital sex anyway. That's in the Bible. We know that, okay? So what I'm saying is this. You don't go run off and get married because you want to make it legit that you're having sex. You know what I mean? Like, that's two separate things. But if you legitimately love somebody, which in this case, I'm pretty sure they do love each other. They have a family already. They want to be together. They should live together. They're a family. Go to the courthouse. Get your marriage license. So that way nobody can say anything to you.
Yeah.
Not that it matters, but so that way you're like, look, we're already married. We're living together. We haven't had the wedding. And maybe they don't want to tell people, because, people get a little funny when you decide to get married before your actual wedding date. Then they don't want to give you gifts. They don't want to come. Okay, fine. Don't tell people that you're already married. But you already know what's right. And if people want to talk, then let them talk. You got the piece of paper that says we are legally married, so you don't have nothing to say whether you knew it or not.
Yes.
We're good to go, and God knows we're good to go.
Yeah, I agree with that. I really, really agree with that. But when you get married at the courthouse, is there I don't know, when you get married at the courthouse, is there a minister there as well, or is it just somebody that represents the state that marries you off?
It's an officiant, and legally you don't need a minister to marry. You need an officiant. And so I think ministers get trained, are legally recognized as officiants as well, because there's some kind of training, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was doing some research on, I don't know if you guys heard of common law, and that's, a law that says after 7 years, if you live with somebody, that, after 7 years, you become husband and wife. And I researched, and they said that this had started in Europe and England around the medieval time. And they did this because I guess the justice of peace couldn't get to them if, their horse and carriage couldn't go that far. Right. They said, you know what, you guys can go off and get married or be considered married if you're living together for 7 years. How do you feel about that now? Because a lot of people feel that way. Well, we live together. It's like we're married.
Right. I think the one thing that we miss is that when you get married, it's a covenant with God. In order to not only legitimize that, you also make that commitment, not only before God, but before people, whether that's an officiant or whether that's in front of like 500 guests, whatever. Either way, you have to make it recognized in some way, shape, or fashion. And people they decide to say, you know what, we've been together, we're common law married, that's good enough for me. Well, only you know what's good between you and God. Do you? Because are you going to love this person the same way you would love them if you were legally married? If the answer is no, and only you can answer that. If the answer is no, and you know that in your heart, then you're not married in the eyes of God. So that's the difference. And some people, I'm not going to sit here and say that only a piece of paper means you're married, because there's plenty of people I know that have a piece of paper that says they're married, but they ain't married.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? But only you know what your feelings are towards this person. And only you know if your level of commitment would be the same if you legally got married or if you're just common law married. And that's between you and God. You know. And 90% of people okay, not 90%, but a very high percentage of people, their commitment is not the same with a common law marriage as it would be if they were legally married. Let's just be real, okay? Okay. Just saying.
You sound like Deitrick at the table at dinner, going in on Gibson. And one of the things he also went in on Gibson was basically saying, you know, like we were saying, shacking to him is not in the Bible, and he knows the Bible. And I did some research, and I'm wondering, how does he know the Bible so well? I know he grew up in the church, but he also went to school for the Bible. He has a doctorate in divinity with an emphasis on marketplace ministry. And what does that mean? This is what it means. He can teach Christian theology or related religious subjects. This is one thing I've seen myself do this. You know, sometimes we'll take the Bible so literal, and I feel like we'll do that to cut corners. And I feel like with this whole shacking situation with him, I feel like that's what he's doing. He's kind of cutting corners. You know, do you feel that way?
I don't know. I don't necessarily feel like that. I feel like, okay, your wedding date is a certain day. You've paid for a venue. The only day they're available is 2 months from, or however many, a year from now. So you have to wait until that day to get married. I think that's what he was waiting on. I don't know. I just feel like, honestly, in his situation, I don't think he's trying to cut corners. I think he's just like, he just can't wait until he
get
it
over with,
so he can finally be with his family.
Okay, so maybe they aren't shacking. He doesn't say it at dinner, but he says it in a confessional after. He made it clear, no, we're not shacking. But he didn't say we're not having premarital sex.
But he does say he knows the distinction, that it is incorrect. But his whole point is, we're not shacking, and there's nothing wrong with living together. The Bible is very clear when it talks about fornication and premarital sex. He's like, yeah, that's wrong, and I get that, but I'm talking about just living together, and that's the same thing I'm saying. There's nothing wrong with living together if you can honestly, legitimately live with somebody and not have sex with them. There's not a problem with that. And people tend to see, oh, well, they're living together, they're automatically having sex. Not everybody has the same, you know, temptations that you have. It's very hard, but I'm just saying, like, you can't automatically assume that.
So you think they're having sex?
Because of their reaction, I want to say no. And the fact that he's like, can we hurry up and just live together? I'm really thinking the answer is no. But I don't know.
He's like, I'm sick of waiting. Let's
go.
No, I agree with you. I feel like they need to do something. It's too much tension. They are just, he kisses her goodbye, says, you know, it was a little dramatic, but says, give a kiss to my baby. I'm sick of doing this. I got to drive back home. And Dominique's like, well, kiss me when text me when you get home, or call me when you get home. And I kind of feel like she's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to do the right thing. And it's making the situation kind of frustrating and hard. And I just feel like, yeah, maybe they should get it over with if they can't. But the wedding's only like a month away.
Which is why her mom in the next episode says, you know, just like, you're almost at the finish line. But again, just go to the courthouse, y'all. Go get the legal papers so y'all can, you know what I mean? Because it's not fair to them. And they're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to hold a good image and be good role models for people, and not, you know, because they've already messed up. So they're like, okay, we messed up. We don't want people to, because we're examples, you know what I mean? We're on a public platform. We're examples. So we're trying to do the right thing, but it's killing us. Y'all go get married so I don't have to bother you no more, please. Go to the courthouse.
I agree. What do you guys think out there? Please chime in, give us a call in, or comment on our YouTube channel. Let us know what you're thinking. Should they just run off and elope and get married? Should they tell Faye or anyone, or keep it to themselves? And that way they can get this over with. Or do you think they should hold off and wait the month or two, how long it is, and wait till they have the official big wedding? Right.
And then the other thing that Deitrick does say is about the information that Pastor Gibson was giving him. He's like, I'm sick of, this is why I'm against pastoral counseling, because he's saying that, you know, they're always giving religious churchy advice, and there's stuff outside of the Bible that we need. The Bible is the basis, which I agree, but there's other stuff. And finally, after he says that, you see Bishop Gibson actually says, you know, being married 31 years, it hasn't always been flowery. And he's like, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I need.
And I like how Gibson said, I was in marriage counseling last Friday.
Right.
Me and my wife to this day go to marriage counseling, and I love that. And I feel like Deitrick loved that too,
Right.
because he felt like, okay, we're really getting the real, you know,
Right.
Gibson here, and that's what people really want to know and see. And how do you feel about marriage counseling?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome, awesome, awesome. And that's why their marriage has been so great. When you want something to succeed, you have to put time, work, and effort into it. And for a marriage to succeed, part of that is counseling. People think like if you go to counseling, you're broken. I honestly am an advocate of marriage counseling, and I do believe you should have a standing appointment with your marriage counselor, whether you guys are doing good, whether you're doing bad, or whatever. You should always go talk to them, because you never know. You want to make sure it's working right. So get counseling for it.
I agree.
All right.
I agree. Okay, do you think we're ready to move on to episode 3?
We are.
All right, so episode 3, Tea and Sympathy. And I guess this episode is really about First Lady Cheney. She decides to throw an exclusive First Lady's tea for a group of high-profile preacher wives. But she invites Miss Loretta Jones, who is technically not a wife. So there is some controversy.
Right. Okay. It's first ladies tea. First ladies and women who are about to be first ladies, which is fiancés. That part I get. Like you want them to be, you want a fiancé to be there because that means they need to know what they're getting into as a first lady. And Loretta has no business there. She's not a girlfriend. She's not a fiancé. She's just a friend.
So do you feel, if you are a special friend, that you have no clout and you have no authority? I mean, you said before she has a business with him. There's
okay,
something
but this is
strong
not the
there.
business partners tea party. This is the first lady's tea party, and she is obviously not a first lady. She's not even in contention. She's not in the running.
But I'll tell you, 16 years, that's longer than some marriages and
okay,
relationships.
right. And so that is, she needs to go to a different party, and that is called I need to find a man who wants to marry me tea party, because this ain't it.
Maybe Noel Jones and Loretta need to go to counseling.
They do, but what kind of, they're not going to go to marriage counseling, not married. They're
Friendship counseling.
What kind of, this is some crap. That's just crap. I'm
That's what they
sorry.
need to
It's
do,
crap.
go to
I
friendship
don't
counseling.
think that Loretta should have been invited. However, because First Lady Maisha Cheney invited the friends of all these women, which was confusing to me.
Yeah, I was confused.
If you invite people's friends, then okay, then Loretta can come. But if the friends didn't come, then Loretta definitely shouldn't have been there.
I think Loretta should have been there, not as a first lady, but as a representative of a
Of
woman
what?
on the show. I feel like that's what we really want to see. We want to see the women of this show come together.
Well, then let's call the women of Preachers of L.A. Tea Party, not the first ladies. She ain't no first lady.
What do you think of Jones's response when Loretta asked him, you know, they invited me to this tea party. Should I go? What should I say? What do you think of his response?
I think his first initial thought was like, why would you go? Like, exactly like us.
She must have felt this small
Right.
when he said, well, why were you invited?
Right. Hello. Why were you invited? And why would you go? And then he's like, okay, because they're going to attack you and ask you questions left, right, left,
Which
right.
he was right. Which
And
he
they
was
did,
right.
right. And he's like, you know, when you're ready to stop answering the questions, just say that we're just friends. That's it. I don't think he really wanted her to go. Let's just be real, because who is she representing?
The friendship that her
This is
and
not
Noel
friendship
Jones
tea
had.
party. This is, oh my gosh, I'm
All
sorry.
right, we're going to save all the tea, gossip, and juiciness for the end of this episode. Let's talk about Gibson. We've seen in the first episode that Rick Dog, who
gangster.
is a Pyru, he's an older gangster, and we see him get saved, and he lets Jesus in his heart. So I love the fact that Gibson didn't just let him go after he got saved. He really took him under his wing and said, you know what, I'm going to show you how your life can change, and I'm going to show you, you know, a good time. I'm going to take you church shoe shopping, you know.
Right. That's so cute. It is
Have his
so
first
cute.
pair of church shoes.
Right. And you know what's crazy? Rick Dog ain't young. Like, this is when it's so heartwarming when he talks about nobody's ever taken me to get shoes. Nobody's ever taught me how to walk. Nobody's ever, you know, tried to help me, you know, be a little more of a refined man. I'm just from the streets, you know. And I love that Bishop Gibson did that because he understands. He's the same guy. He was OG Rick Dog back in his former life. So he gets it, and he's so helpful. And I think it's so awesome that he reaches back and he's showing him, how to walk. He looks different. He got new shoes on. He got to get him shine. He's feeling good, feeling great. Yes. And that's awesome.
And I like how Gibson said, you can take the hood. You can, what does it say? You can take the man out of the hood, but you can also take the hood out of the man.
Right.
And, some people like to say that phrase a little bit differently, but it's true. We see that with Gibson. He is a changed man because of Christ. And what I also love about Gibson is that not only did he take Rick Dog, he also took his friend Ray, which he calls Biggie on the show, and he took him shopping too. He bought him some shoes, and he spoke the word into him, and it even had his friends thinking, wow, like,
it's cool hanging out with a pastor.
It's actually fun hanging out with somebody who's of the church.
And that's how it's supposed to be. You know what I mean? We make it seem, the sad part of Christians is that sometimes we make ourselves seem so special and so different that we're no longer relevant, and we no longer can relate to regular people, when at the end of the day we still regular people. We just know the love of God. That's the only difference.
Exactly.
And I love the fact that he does that, and he makes it say, like, we're still cool. I'm just taking you shopping, no big deal.
And he also said that I'm gonna find you a church,
right,
in Compton that you can go to. I'm gonna help you find a job. He's really, really taking him under his wings to make sure that he comes out of this, and that he helps younger gangbangers to get out of it as well. But one thing I would have to say is Bishop Gibson, I know you brought him to get a new pair of shoes, which was a great thing, but you should have got him a haircut.
Well, he didn't want to cut his hair. He got them OG braids, girl. He can't. He's been growing that out for a minute. That's gonna take an extra blessing for him to let go of his hair.
To see him nice, clean, shaved, haircut.
He's not ready for that.
Maybe that's next episode. Maybe that's
right. Baby steps, Fallon. Baby steps. Good grief.
But we do appreciate Gibson taking him out of the hood and showing him a new thing or two.
But he did. I didn't like how he said, he was like, when they first started, he said he needs, talking about Rick Dog, he said he needs to look like he's going to church. And I think that's a little messed up because, while yes, he does represent an OG in his attire,
and his braids.
And his braids, right. He can still go to church looking like that. So we got to get rid of the notion that there's a certain look in church, because that keeps people from coming, because if they feel like they don't fit in.
This is true. It's come as you are. And I know when I started going to church in LA, I had to realize this, like, I thought I had to show up to church every time in a skirt. That's the way I was raised. So
what is that? Were you Pentecostal?
No.
Where you grow up at? What kind
Massachusetts.
I'm saying, but what kind of church
I was Christian, but it just that was just something you did as a woman.
Right.
Like Lady Lovette, she always wears her hats.
Right.
That's the way she grew up. So it was new to me that I could go to a church and wear pants. So I think it's great that, come as you are. But I think Bishop Gibson knows that, people judge you.
Right.
And he wants to give Rick Dog a fair chance when he walks into the church, and that's why he was kind of helping him out with his walk. Like, this is how you walk, because that's society. That's real life,
I don't think for the church, though. I think he should have said, just because he's accepted Jesus and he's got this whole new outlook on life, that should be reflected in his everyday life, not necessarily he needs a new look to go to church, because that's not fair. That's a place where he should not be getting judged, and we can't ever make it okay for people to get judged at church. So I just think that he probably should have phrased that differently and said, he's a new man, so he needs to reflect that in the way he walks and the way he looks out in the world, period.
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
Look
at you. Let me find it. You Kojic over here, AME or something. Fallon over here talking about, we got to wear skirts. Girl, that is old school Pentecostal.
No,
I'm Baptist. Oh, I was raised Baptist, and sometimes we had to wear skirts.
That's just, in my church, if you were a girl, I mean, I've seen a couple women, growing up in the church wear pants, but it was just, that's the way. I mean, my grandma was Pentecostal, so I guess that was some of the influence.
Girl, y'all holiness church over there, apostolic or something. Okay.
All right, let's talk about the Hazlips.
Yes.
We see in this episode that Christy kind of goes to her man and tells him, they go for a walk in the park, and she kind of reveals to him that she feels very lonely.
Right.
And I felt so sad for her because
Right.
I guess it's a little hard being a first lady. It's not all glamorous just because you got, the first pew in the church.
Right.
I guess it is lonely. She feels that some people want to befriend her only because of her status in the church
Right.
and not for who she really is.
And she said she's been hurt by people. And I can, you really don't get a sense of that unless you're a first lady. So being able to see that, I thought about it, I'm like, yo, it is kind of lonely because she's like, I can't really have friends in the church. You know what I mean? I can't go kick back with my friends and just be myself because then they're going to come at me like, First Lady Christy she had a glass of wine, was acting crazy.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Then people going to talk about you. So obviously there's some hurt. So something like that has had to happen to her already. And so she feels very secluded and I feel bad for her.
I'm trying to figure out. I know that Pastor Jay has he was addicted to drugs in the past, but I don't know Christy's past.
Right.
I wonder what was her past, if she has anything that she feels like new friends could judge her on, or just her being a regular person that she feels that some people might judge her.
I think that's what it is, just being a regular person, because she says when she hangs out with Maisha at the end of the episode, she says that she feels like I can just be myself and hang out and I'm not judged. I don't have to be on per se. I don't have to be first lady all the time, which a lot of people feel like you should act a certain way, you should talk a certain way, you should have certain thoughts because you're a first lady, when in essence, no, you're just married to a man who preaches God's word. You're still a regular person. People forget that.
Yeah. And I think that's what this whole show is about, is, showing the reality of these preachers and their families and their wives and all that. So, Christy, if you want some friends,
we got you, girl. We got you.
Come to AfterBuzz. We'll be your friend. We'll have our own little tea party.
Right.
Something else that they had discovered while in the park was a woman who looked like she was hurt. And I love how Pastor Hazlip didn't hesitate. And even Christy was like, go over there and talk to her and see if she needs, some love or some help. And it was just very noticeable that she was extremely skinny. Maybe it looked like she was dealing with some anorexia or some self issues.
And she did say she, had anxiety and wanted to commit suicide, and panic attacks, that kind of thing. And, I felt some people may say that what Pastor Hazlip did was a little nosy, because he did just walk up to her and say, do you need love? But I love it because sometimes that's what we're called to do.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
You got to be bold. Right.
Yep.
You got to be bold. And if you're doing it with the intention of I just want to love on this person and that's it, then you'll never be wrong. But if you go with the intention of I'm a pastor and I'm going to pray for you because I have the anointing, then you will find issues where you're wrong.
Yeah. And I don't feel that with Jay. To me, he has no ego. And that's just the sense that I'm getting from these episodes. I really feel that he is coming from a pure, loving place. And, I love the fact that we're seeing real ministry. We're seeing Gibson go to the hood and, not just save somebody, but taking him under his wing and showing him a different way. Then we see Jay, who is just having a nice day with his wife, and still he feels like he needs to help and love on somebody and pray for someone. So I think that is so great.
That's why they're my favorite couple. I love them. Hi, Hazlips. I'm coming to your church.
and that's something I think we should do. I think we should try to go to some of these churches and be able to report back to our AfterBuzz fans. Some of you who may not be in California, who we can say we went to this church and we met.
I don't know. There's a couple of churches I ain't going in.
And which churches
I'm
are
not
that?
gonna say. I'm not gonna say. I'll let you go to those churches.
All right. Let's see. What else do we have to? Okay, let's just get straight to it. The tea party.
Yep.
All right, so we see the ladies looking beautiful.
Absolutely stunning.
This episode inspired me to go out and buy more hats. I want to feel like a lady. I loved how,
Who was your favorite hat, by the way?
I was going to say Loretta. She had a nice hat, but Maisha, I love the little mesh or the net.
It was so cute. That was my favorite, too.
They look like real ladies, and I feel like we don't really do that often as ladies.
We should.
We grow up playing with these little, tea. We have little tea parties and kettles, and you kind of grow up and you just hang out with your girls. But it'd be nice to do something like that. I think one of these episodes we should dress up fancy.
We should and have our first lady hats on.
Well, we're not. What are we? We're not friends, ladies.
We're
We're
friends.
not first ladies. What are we?
We're friends because everyone has friends. And obviously, friends can go to tea parties
we should call
too.
Loretta too, right?
We
Have
should call her. That is so funny. So yes, one of the things they did talk about was, of course, like we just said, how they need friends that understand the struggle of being a first lady and some of the things you have to go through, and that's what Christy says. Mm-hmm. And then also, I think Dominique asked a good question. She's like, well, what do you do basically with church groupies? Like, what do you do with church groupies? And that's a legitimate question. You never think about that.
Yes.
But, women are attracted to power, and men in church, pastors especially, have power. They're very powerful people. So,
and I think women too, we have this image on our heads, and again, we're schooled on this from little girls. We're waiting for our prince, and who wouldn't want a prince who is a man of God?
Right.
And
God has that anointing.
Exactly. So I can definitely understand why some woman would, be attracted to that, but I can say it must be hard being in that position, because not only is this your man and you have maybe women throwing themselves at them, but you're also a first lady, so you have to act accordingly because you may be judged.
Can't fight in the church. Boom.
You have to show love.
Can't put that holy elbow in nobody's throat. That's not okay. But also, and they say it takes a special woman to be a first lady. It does, because
I agree.
You have to always be kingdom minded and all about the ministry. And sometimes that means that there might be a little church groupie who needs deliverance and
some extra guidance and pastoring.
And she might get a word from your husband that helps change her life. So you have to be very, cautious. You can't be like, no, don't talk to her. Mm-hmm. You gotta just trust God. And that's tough. That takes a lot of faith. And I give it to first ladies on that front.
I do. I feel the same exact way. One thing I did notice, we have all the women here, but there was one woman missing. We did not see Bishop McClendon's wife.
Right. We haven't really seen her much yet.
We have not seen much of her at all, and it just makes me wonder, what's going on? Why doesn't she come into the season more? Why don't we see more of her? Is it of her saying, or does Bishop McClendon kind of put his hand down and said, this is as far as it goes. I'll show myself, I'll show my church, even my sons, but my wife is,
that'll be interesting.
I wonder if we'll see more of her throughout the season, or did you catch on that? Did you notice that she wasn't part of the tea party?
Well, we haven't really seen much of her at all. We haven't seen Bishop McClendon that much anyway, but we've seen him enough to know that he's on the show. His wife, we don't see her too much.
Because we have, Miss Cheney having girls who are fiancés, who are friends, but why wouldn't you invite...
No, maybe she did invite Bishop McClendon's wife, Priscilla, but maybe she couldn't come. Yeah. Maybe there was some...
But they didn't address that either, and we didn't hear anything, we're going to invite Priscilla, Dominique, so-and-so. Nothing was mentioned of her.
Yeah,
so.
That is a little different. And then, of course...
stay tuned.
Right, and then, of course, they talk about Loretta being there and, the exchange that she has, because they're confused. They're like, are you engaged? Are you dating? Oh, you're friends, 16-year friends. Okay. And then I think, what did you think about Levette's response to her?
I agree with Levette. I think Lady Levette always comes off with a real response, but she always does it in a place of love.
Right.
And I love that about her. Everything she said, I agreed with, even when she was talking to Dominique and she was just being real. I feel like I agree with her, and I think she's been married to a preacher for over 30 years. Right. She knows, and she can distinguish, Bible and not Bible.
Exactly. Babble, as Gibson says, Bible and babble.
What did you think of what she said?
I liked what she said, especially the Proverbs 31 part where she said, your merchandise is good. So if he ain't been seeing it, you might want to walk, and she tells Loretta, 16 years, don't wait too long, Don't wait too long. Keep it moving. And that's for all of y'all. Your merchandise is good, ladies. Remember, your merchandise is good.
Your merchandise is great.
Don't shortchange yourself.
And
don't wait too long.
Something that I also liked is Loretta was honest. She told everybody, I'm just going to be clear. Ain't no marriage coming around the corner.
Right.
And she said it very confident, but a part of me felt like
Girl,
bad.
you went.
You know,
Well, because here's what she said. She was like, and they're like, are you okay with, all this? And she's like, I'm happy being single. I'm happy just to be Loretta. But if marriage is in the plans, then okay.
Yeah. She said she would be happier. And she said, pray and fast for me. So obviously,
she wants to be.
it. Yeah.
Girl, you better get you a new man because we already said Bishop Jones don't want to be married, honey. He likes that life.
I think he does. And I
He
think,
does.
he is 60-something years old. He might be set in his ways. He is older.
Girl, leave him alone. Just let him be a business partner.
Then we see Lady Levette give some words of wisdom to Dom.
Right.
And she said, it might be old school, but it's Bible. Don't cohabitate without marriage. You are not supposed to be shacking. What did you think of Dominique's response?
Honey,
This is what she said. She says, we are married by definition in Bible. Once a man enters a woman, then we are married.
Girl, John 4:17 through 18 yet again, talking about the Samaritan woman who was shacking. It's not true. Just because you have relations with someone, people, does not mean you're married to them.
Let me
because
tell you.
hold on, because that means some of y'all married to a whole lot of people.
Whole
Lot of people.
Whole lot of men.
And that's not the case because marriage is definitely a covenant between you, your spouse, and God, and it's a special holy union. And I don't think you're gonna have a special holy union with a whole bunch of people.
Yeah,
Let's just be real.
Lady Levette interrupts her and says, "No, that is not marriage. That is fornication. Just stop it."
Right.
I think Dominique had a little too much tea at the tea party.
Right. She put something in her tea, but that's real.
Commitment is not marriage, and she says, it's your opinion versus the word. They're two different things.
Right. And then so later on we have Dominique and Deitrick. We find they're getting married in a couple of months, and she has a conversation with Faye, and she's talking about, I just don't understand why we just can't get married.
Let me say something about Faye. Am I the only one, or does she remind you of Tyler Perry's character Medea?
In a way, yes. I love Faye. Faye probably is my favorite person on the entire show. I love her.
She reminds me of my grandma. She really does. She's loved, but she doesn't want to be hugged. I like how he tries to hug her, and she's like, she's just
tough
not
love.
affectionate. Exactly, tough love.
But she's so loving though, but it's just a tough love.
Yes, I love it.
And she tells them, that's not okay. Y'all can't be living together. You almost at the finish line. You'll be all right. And that's real. I think she gives her daughter some sound advice. And when Dominique asks her about how did you do it, Mom, raising 3 kids, by yourself, because she is a single parent right now. Dominique is a single parent, with not having her husband there all the time, not living with him in that sense. So when she asked her mom was like, "Cause we spanked back in the day. Y'all don't spank." And I think that's real. Do you think it's true?
Yeah, I think it's real.
I think people should be allowed to whoop their kids.
Yeah, it's
still.
a little.
Right, not any, abuse is not of
exactly,
God.
But,
God is not abusive.
Yeah, sometimes
sometimes I think
spank and put in the corner,
punch in the face. I'm just playing,
no,
not that. I'm just messing with you. No, but I'm serious. I think that's part of the reason. The Bible says, "I got enough spanking verses here for ya." The rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself brings shame to his mother. Do not withhold discipline from a child. If you strike him with a rod, he will not die. If you strike him with a rod, you will save his soul from Sheol, which is also the underworld. And that's Proverbs. I read Proverbs 29:15 and Proverbs 23:13 through 14. So yes, I don't think spanking is wrong. I think abuse is wrong. And if you truly are disciplining your child, you're doing it from a loving place, and love is never abusive.
I so agree. Let's get on to news and gossip.
AfterBuzz TV News.
All right, I got some news and gossip. Going on to oxygen.com, there was a poll, and the poll was shacking or not shacking. So it was really Lady Dominique saying, let's modernize the church and allow shacking. Or it was up against First Lady Levette Gibson saying, the rules are there for a reason, no shacking. And the results are 10% were in favor of Dominique saying, let's modernize the church with 58 votes. And Lady Levette came in with 89%. with 470 votes saying no shacking allowed.
No shacking allowed, honey.
No shacking
No
allowed.
shacking.
Do you have any more news and gossip?
Yes, we do. So remember in the first episode that Bishop McClendon said that he basically he needed his crew to deliver his anointing. Well, he came out recently on Hip Hollywood, and he had an interview. He said Jesus didn't have a megachurch, but he had 12 disciples. Some people would refer to that as entourage, but these were men who were trained to assist Jesus in his ministry assignment. So the people that I have to travel with are a function in my ministry assignment. The thing that I cleared up and wanted cleared up was that the people I travel with, my ministry pays for those people, and they are covered by Clarence McClendon Ministries. So basically he's saying if he goes somewhere and they ask him to preach, he does have an quote-unquote entourage with him to help him out, but his ministry pays for that, not whatever the church is giving them as an honorarium.
And I think it's good he cleared that up.
Right.
Bishop T.D. Jenks, I also have some, they were interviewed by Hip Hop Hollywood,
Right.
and T.D. Jenks had said that when asked, would he ever do a reality show? Now, we know from last show, News and Gossip, he had kind of shunned and rebuked Preachers of L.A.
Right.
But he went on to Hip Hollywood and said that he doubts he will ever do a reality show, but I wouldn't say never.
Never say never.
I don't know how I feel about that. How do you guys feel about that? Should he have gone on and kind of rebuked the show and then said that he might do a reality show?
Right. I don't know.
You
We'll
guys
see.
out there, please comment, rate, subscribe. We thank you for all of you out there who have been commenting. And I would like to say, I know there was a few comments about our first episode, and, you know, some of them felt like, and I'll put myself on the spotlight.
That you should be on this show because you are biased.
Okay,
I'll
and
say it the way they said it.
let me respond. I'm the one who got this show on AfterBuzz, and I thought it would be great to have an inside scoop of what's really going on in the show, you
Right.
know, and to be able to reach out to these preachers and have some of the executive producers on
Right.
who we might get on next week. And, you know, I do have my own opinion. I am Christian. I'm also part of, you know, the LPM team,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that I have my own opinion. And sometimes it always doesn't line up with, you know, my work. So I think, you know, you're a Christian, I'm part of the LPM team. We should probably have somebody who is just a fan or a viewer who maybe not be religious on the show.
Right. And if
So-
you want to call in and be our special guest, you can do that. Make sure we're always airing this every Thursday at 8 p.m. Pacific. So call us. We would love your comments.
You know, I'm also going to have one of my friends try to get on the show. He's an entertainment lawyer, and he is also studying divinity in
Okay.
college as well. And I think it would be nice to see his opinion, becoming, you know, a lawyer of entertainment, and then
Right.
also learning about the church from a scholastic point of view. I think it would be awesome to have his opinion on the show. So I'll try to get him on for you guys.
All right. It's been real.
It has been real. I am sweating. We just covered 2 big episodes.
And now,
Right.
your AfterBuzz TV
So,
predictions.
oh yes, sorry. We'll just make this really quick. We see that next week that Deitrick saying, let's just do it now as far as getting married. He's really getting antsy. I don't think they're going to get married before their wedding date.
Why don't you think so?
I just don't think so.
They're just so antsy.
They're not going to, honey. Because then there wouldn't be no show. Let's just be real.
We shall see.
Okay.
We shall see. We will see you guys next time. Thank you for joining, and it was so fun catching up on episode 2 and episode 3. Make sure you tune in to Thursday nights.
Right.
We will be recapping episode 4. I'm your host, Fallon Mercedes. You guys can catch me on Instagram, on Twitter, @FitWithFallon. Please tweet at me. And again, welcome. We welcome you for more YouTube comments. Where can they find you, Megan?
You can always hit me up on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @MegScoop, like scoop of ice cream. Look forward to hearing from you.
We will see you next time.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later!
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.